All right, so 6b, we have sine times cosine. So that's the same formula we used earlier, right? Plus all right, then go ahead and subtract. They got a common denominator there. Or add, whichever it tells you to do. So when we take 5 pi over 24 plus pi over 24, that's 6 pi over 24. That reduces. I'll take 5 pi over 24 minus pi over 24 is 4 pi over 24. That also reduces. And we have two angles that we have ordered pairs for. What's the ordered pair for pi over 4? Yeah, because it's the same as the 45 degrees above, right? And what about pi over 6? Yeah, it's the same as the 30 degrees we had above. All right, so what is sine of pi over 4? Good. Plus, what is sine of pi over 6? And so we have 1/2 times square root of 2 plus 1 all over 2. Which gives us square root of 2 plus 1 all over 4 for the exact value. For number 7, we're going to use the sum to product formula to rewrite each expression as a product. Simplify where possible. So we have cosine minus cosine. So look at your sum to product formulas. And you'll see that, what is it? If you have cosine of x minus cosine of y, I believe it tells you it's going to be -2 sine of x plus y over 2 times sine of x minus y over 2. And so we're just going to plug in. And simplify. All right, since number 8 didn't exist, we're actually going to go into number 9. So it says find all solutions of each equation and express in, I'm sure this was supposed to be degrees. All right, so for A, we have 2 sine of x equals -1. So first thing we need to do is solve for sine. So we're going to divide by the 2. And so we know that sine of x is equal to -1/2. And this is where we have to figure out what angles we're in, but we're finding all solutions. So before we found it in radians and we put plus 2 pi in at the end of it, but now we're in degrees. So instead of plus 2 pi, what are we going to put? Plus 360 in at the end of it, okay? So, but we have to figure out what quadrants is sine going to be negative. So we're going to have a quadrant 3 answer, and we're going to have a quadrant 4 answer. So in quadrant 3, where is sine equal to -1/2? Well, let's see. Sine is what, x or y?
Something over 6.
Okay, sine is my y value, And so we know then our reference angle from quadrant 1 is going to be, let's do it in degrees. I'm sorry. Bad habit because we usually use radians. I guess not bad, but you know. All right, so my reference angle is 30 degrees. So that means this little angle right there is 30 degrees. What angle are we at? What's 180 plus 30? So in quadrant 3, our angle is 210 degrees. But remember it said find all solutions, not just between 0 and 360. So we're going to put plus 360 degrees in. And then in quadrant 4, we already found our reference angle right there is 30 degrees. So where are we at if we're 30 degrees before the full circle? So we're before 360 degrees. 360 minus 30 would be 330 degrees, and we're not restricted, so we're going to put plus 360 degrees in.
I was thinking 180, but then I thought 280, and I was like, oh no.
All right, for B, we're doing the same thing. It was a little weird looking, but I went ahead and combined my like terms first. So I have 6 plus cosecant of x equals 0, and then move the 6 over. But we don't know really what to do with the reciprocal functions too much. So take its reciprocal. What's the reciprocal of cosecant? Sine. So we know sine of x will equal what? Negative 1/6. All right. Well, that's not on my unit circle, though, is it? So, oh darn, we're going to end up having to use our calculator. But first, what quadrants are we in? Yeah, we're still going to be in quadrant 3 and quadrant 4. All right, so remember to find your x value. I'm going to come up here. So to find the x, remember you're going to take the inverse sine of negative 1/6. And it tells us what? All right, so you ended up getting negative 9.594. All right, it doesn't tell us here how to round it, so we're just going to go to 3 to be safe. All right, so that, because it's negative, guys, negative 9-point-something degrees, that is my quadrant 4 angle, okay? It doesn't say we're restricted between 0 and 360, so we could use that negative answer. So our x will equal negative 9.594 degrees plus 360 degrees in. What's that? Oh, because it's a negative angle, so we're going to go clockwise a little over 9 degrees. So that's quadrant 4. Now, if you wanted to, you could add 360 degrees to it and find what we're used to seeing, okay? It'll still be correct because they're in the same location and we're not restricted. We're finding all solutions. All right, but for quadrant 3 angle, that means that we're going to be over here, but what is my little reference angle right there? Is it negative, though, if it's a reference angle? No. The negative told me we were going clockwise. The 9.594 told me how far. So my reference angle is the 9.594. So we're going to add that to 180 because we're in quadrant 3. All right, plus our 360 degrees in. All right, so we're going to use trig to solve in the interval from 0 to 2 pi. So now we're not going to put the plus 360 in, or in this case plus 2 pi in, because we're in radians. So let's Let's solve. So it means I need my trig functions on the same side if I can't convert one to something else. And we can't. Sine doesn't go to cosine. Cosine doesn't go to sine. So what we can do, though, is we could divide both sides by cosine. And so when I do that, sine over cosine is tangent. And cosine divided by itself is 1. So we're looking for where tangent is going to be positive 1. Well, tangent is positive in what quadrants? Quadrant 1 and quadrant 3. What is tangent is what in terms of our x and y? Y over x. So what is the only way that y divided by x can equal 1? If they're the same, right? So where in quadrant 1 is my x and y value going to be the same? Okay, so there's my quadrant 1 answer. And where in quadrant 3 is x and y the same?
Something over 4.
Right, something over 4. So you know your reference angle then is going to be pi over 4. And so what's pi plus pi over 4? 5 pi over 4. And so there's our two solutions.